Hi, I'm Craig Johnson with IPEX Electrofusion, and in this video we're going to go over the installation of a DAA tapping tee with undersaddle. Our DAA tapping tees come with an undersaddle through 8-inch. If you're doing 10-inch and above, you're going to get one that looks like this, and you need to use a Frialen top loading tool. When we have a video on that, so if you're using one like this, go ahead and watch that video. I'm going to go ahead and take these bolts out, and we're going to start the installation. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is inspect our pipe. We're looking for gouges, embedded stones, anything that's going to impede our fusion. And we're going to wipe it down with a clean, dry cloth. And while we're doing this, we're actually feeling for any kind of imperfections in the pipe. Pipe's good. We're going to take our tee. I've taken a couple of bolts out of it. And we're going to set it where we're going to fuse it. We're going to mark the fusion area so we know where we have to prepare, where we have to scrape. But we're actually going to mark it about an inch outside of that area. And we're doing that so there is evidence to the inspector that you've prepared this correctly. They know that underneath this you've scraped it and prepared it correctly. We're going to take a moment to address pipe preparation changes to ASTM F3565. You'll see we've got our area where we're going to have our saddle fusion right here. We've got an additional saddle length on either side. This outside line indicates our water wash area. This line indicates our solvent wash area. We're going to thoroughly wash this area from this line to this line with water. Once that water is dried, we're going to address the solvent wash area from this line to this line. We recommend a 96% or better isopropyl alcohol wipe for this application. And we're going to thoroughly clean that with that wipe. Once that is thoroughly dried, you can go ahead, put on your squiggly marks, and get ready to scrape your pipe. We've got our preparation area marked out. I've got my wavy lines, which help me know when I'm done scraping. And this brings me to our 4 points of fusion. There's 4 factors in getting a successful fusion: virgin material, heat, pressure, and cooling without movement. The first one, virgin material, we're going to attain by scraping this pipe. I'm going to be using our FWZ hand scraper. You can also use one of our SE scraping tools, can be used for this type of scraping process. But I'm going to use the hand scraper because you're probably going to use a hand scraper. Before we proceed further with the installation, I want to go to our second and third points of fusion. The second was heat. This right here is your fusion zone. And that's where the coils are in this pad. So your processor is going to energize these coils. It's going to act as a resistor, and it's going to liquefy everything on this pad and where it's touching the pipe. The third factor in fusion was pressure. You can see these zones marked cold zone on the outside and on the inside. This liquefied material, as it's going through fusion, is going to try to migrate out as well as in. When it hits those cold zones, it's going to dam up. When that dams up, it solidifies and keeps all that liquid polyethylene in here. So that's building pressure, and that's how we get pressure when we're doing a saddle fusion. Once you have your pipe fully scraped, you're going to take a alcohol wipe with a 96% or better isopropyl alcohol and wipe it down, as well as the interior of your saddle. It's important to let these fully dry before assembling. If you trap any of this liquid in there, it could flash to steam. It's going to look for a way out. It's going to cause wormholes. So let this completely dry. This tee can be installed at any point on the pipe. You could have it at 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock underneath. It can be put wherever you want it to be put. That is sufficiently dry. Go ahead, set that on. On this particular saddle, you're going to tighten these bolts right down because they're stops. Some of the smaller saddles do not have those. You're just going to tighten it down until it's firm and snug. When tightening up your saddle, you're going to want to do it in a crisscross fashion or a star pattern. That way you don't have one side bind up. You may actually make a gap between the pipe and the fitting if you don't tighten this up in a uniform fashion. And as I said, this saddle has stops, so I can tighten them right down to the stops. Once your saddle is tightened up, you need to check for any gaps between the pipe and the saddle. You're going to take a clean cable tie, because you can't put any kind of feeler gauge, any metal, anything that's going to damage anything inside of here in here. You're going to have to use something like this. So use a cable tie, and you go ahead and you check around the edges and see if you've got any space where this tie can go in very far, and we're good. If you did, you'd let it rest, try to tighten it up a little more. If you get to a point where you cannot get rid of a flat spot, move somewhere else. Try your fusion a little bit away. Our T is secured on the pipe. It's time to go ahead, hook up our processor, and scan the barcode. Our processor is going to tell us we've got a Frialen T, 8-inch IPS by 1-inch IPS. We're going to go ahead and start. It's going to tell us we have 477 seconds to finish this fusion. While this fitting is cooling, I'll take a minute to show you the sticker with the barcode on it. Right up here is your barcode, and you'll see these numbers along the top. If you were doing a manual input on a processor, these are the numbers you're going to input. If you need to, you can take a picture with your cell phone and expand it so it's easier to read. Right here you'll see indicates this is a DAA tapping T, 8x1, and it shows you cooling time. In this case, it's 60 minutes. Now, this fitting has an undersaddle, as you saw. If this were a fitting they were using a Friatop for, that Friatop needs to stay in place the entire cooling time. Other things to take note of is the date code on the fitting. If you should ever have an issue with the fitting, we're going to need to know this information. Here you'll see there's a 08 that indicates this fitting was made in 2008. Here we've got a 10, and here it's pointing at 4. That indicates this fitting was made in the 14th week of 2008. This last clock indicates a material type. In this case, it points to E, which indicates polyethylene. Our fusion's complete. And there's a few things we want to indicate on the pipe. FC, fusion complete. In this case, I put my initials. You might put your employee number, your mechanic number, whatever's pertinent for you. The date of the fusion. The time the fusion was complete, in this case 4:35. Down here we've got CT for cooling time, indicates 60 minutes. So that means our cooling time will expire at 5:35, which time you can, if you're using the Friatop, remove your Friatop and you can be ready to pressure test. Now we're ready to remove our cap and start our pressure test. For 2x2 and up, anything bigger, you're going to use a 19mm hex wrench. For 2x1/2 inch through 2x1, you can use a 17mm hex wrench. We can go ahead and use our hex wrench to remove the plug on top. And once you're done with your pressure test, this is going to operate your cutter as well, but we're not ready for that quite yet. Here's your pressure test cap. You can see it's got two sides. The smaller side up here, that's for 2x1/2 inch through 2x1. This larger side is going to be 2x2 all the way through 16 inch. And you can see, you're going to be able to thread your apparatus right into the top of that. You're going to spin it down, and you're going to engage that O-ring and seal it up. You can attach your valve apparatus to the top of that. And once you've actually put your line on here and you have some way to make this captive, you can run your pressure test prior to tapping into the side of the pipe. We're ready to remove our test cap. Like all tools, it's important to keep them clean. Keep the threads clean, keep the O-ring clean, keep debris out of here. And if you notice any cracks in the O-ring, go ahead and replace it. Passed our pressure test, now it's time to tap. Take our 19mm hex wrench and go ahead, begin our tap. The correct way to use this is the way you see it. That's the incorrect way to use this. You want to keep it balanced. That's all the pressure you're going to need to do this. You'll feel your resistance when you're going through the wall of the pipe. And you'll feel it let go when you get through the wall of the pipe. The coupon of the pipe wall is now captive inside that cutter. So we're going to go ahead, reverse direction, and bring this cutter back to the top of this chimney. When we do that, it's going to start to flow from the main into your outlet. We're going to bring it all the way up. After it's up, flow is started, you're going to go ahead and replace that plug cap with O-ring. Okay, we've hit the top stop. It's worth mentioning, this is the metal cutter running on a metal insert. So we have a metal stop at the bottom and at the top. We brought this up, the flow is open. We're going to go ahead and replace our plug cap with O-ring. And tighten that right down. And we're in operation. I just talked about the upper and lower stops. So let's take a minute and look at the inside of this fitting. On the bottom, you have a threaded, tapered cutter head. Just above that, we've got an O-ring that seals this cutter assembly to the chimney insert. Just above the O-ring, that's your lower stop. Right here we have our hex wrench receiving well. We come up here, you'll see the upper stop, so we can't bring this cutter straight out of the chimney. You'll notice these grooves on the edge. That keeps that insert captive inside the polyethylene. And up top, we've got a plug cap with O-ring. If it ever came time to abandon this tee, we also have a fitting, a cap, that will go right over this chimney and will fuse right on so nobody can access it again. And that's the Frialen DAA tapping tee, distributed by IPEX. This is a safety fitting, and if safety is important to your organization, there's no other fitting you should be using.